From the KSL Broadcast House, this is Sunday Edition with Doug Wright.
Welcome to Sunday Edition. On the program today, we're going to look forward to the 2022 election, both locally and, of course, at the national level, the federal level for the state of Utah. But first, we wanted to focus on something happening down in Utah County, one of the great treasures of our state, and certainly one of the most beautiful bodies of water we have in the state is Utah Lake. And there isn't a week that goes by that I don't drive by, either on the east side or the west side, heading down to my home in Eureka, Utah. And I've heard a lot of plans over the years, all kinds of things proposed. And I understand right now there's some very interesting development, not only around the lake, but in or on islands built in the lake. And the council in Provo, Utah, passed a resolution to really study this. It was a resolution calling for the responsible restoration of Utah Lake. And Councilperson George Handley is joining us right now. Councilman Handley, thank you for joining us on Sunday Edition. And perhaps you could just tell us, what are some of the things being kicked around that got the attention of the council in Utah County?
Well, thank you so much for having me. This is a really important topic. Just for clarification, we haven't finished drafting the resolution yet, but we did vote unanimously to draft one and then vote on it in early January in time for the legislative session that will be coming up. I've been a follower of the lake and the watershed for many years. I'm actually in my other line of my day job, I'm a professor at Brigham Young University and an author of a book about the Provo River watershed. And so I've done a fair amount of study over the years of the lake, and just an underappreciated gem that is vital to our ecosystem and to our environment here. And I've been alarmed increasingly at this idea of building islands in the lake and dredging the entire lake, which is based on no science that is respectable for understanding how lakes are actually supposed to be restored. And we as a city and other cities in the valley have been spending lots of money, and different state agencies over many years, to improve the water treatment plants that go into the lake so that the lake can recover. We've been working on a Provo River delta restoration here in Provo for many years, and will be completed soon. The June sucker has been delisted. Algal blooms are decreasing in the lake. The lake is recovering, and it's because we're putting so much effort and money into helping it. And now this project is based on the assumption that the lake is irreparable, and that this is the only drastic measure that we can possibly take to restore it. But of course, I think the word restore has to be put in quotes, because what they're proposing is a total defacing of the lake and a complete transformation of our environment permanently. So for me, it's just unacceptable.
I love reading history, and the history of Utah particularly, and certainly of Utah County. And when I read the descriptions in various books of what that body of water once was, and the streams flowing into it, and the type of fish that we had in that lake, and the clarity of it. And, you know, obviously there are some issues, but to think that it's getting better heartens me. But what more needs to be done? We'll never get it back to the pristine time of the indigenous people camped around various spots, including the Provo River. But what is the ultimate goal from your point of view, with your background and your expertise?
Well, I think it's to stay the course of responsible ecological restoration, which will continue to improve the quality of the lake. I think one of the things that I feel the most sad about is that this proposal is taking advantage of a misperception and a misunderstanding that the lake is more damaged than it actually is. And that, for example, the lake is not supposed to be as shallow as it is. That's not true. It's been historically a very shallow lake, and that gives it actually some of its unique ecological characteristics. And so there's, I think because of the history of Geneva steel and the carp, there's a perception that it's, again, sort of damaged beyond repair. And it's just, like I say, simply not true. We've removed almost 75% of the carp in the lake. And that's actually as close as we may be able to get to a healthy restoration. And with the Provo River Delta restoration and the Hobble Creek restoration, the dune sucker is recovering. We've already driven into extinction, I think it's 11 of the original 13 species that were native to Utah Lake since the time of the Latter-day Saint pioneers. But we have a very biodiverse lake that is a host to many species of fish, and it's a recreational gem. It's always going to be murky. That's actually part of being a shallow lake, and that's not pollution. There is pollution in the lake, but the lake, like I say, is recovering well and recovering nicely. And the idea that we would spend as many millions of dollars as all of the cities are being asked to spend to improve our treatment plant in order to improve the phosphorus and nitrogen levels in the lake, and then turn around and have this proposal saying that the lake is beyond repair and it needs this drastic dredging of 20,000 acres of lake bed, which has never been done, by the way. There's no project even close to this in the history of dredging. This is on the order of 370 times more dredging than any other major dredging project. And dredging isn't really the recommended method anymore for ecological restoration of a body of water like this. So there's some assumptions that are in the proposal and in the plans that are just erroneous and misleading.
Councilman Handley, we're almost out of time, but you mentioned that there was a little bit of a crunch to get things put together in time for the legislative session, which is now just around the corner. How confident are you that right decisions will be made on Utah's Capitol Hill and the best interests of the people of the state, the lake itself, the environment, and the history of the lake will prevail over perhaps desires of particular developers?
Well, I mean, one always has to be very worried and vigilant. This is frankly one of the most important reasons why I decided to run for public office, is that I feel like there's just you can never rest assured that things like Utah Lake or Bridal Veil Falls or other things that we value in our community are safe. We have to be vigilant. I think people are waking up. There's a signature campaign that is growing in size, and I think the state legislators will be surprised and hopefully impressed at how many thousands of people want to say, absolutely no, this is the wrong project. We need to stay the course of ecological restoration of the lake that in a responsible way. And we know we have to develop, we know we have to grow. That's the other thing. We're working so hard in Provo and other cities to find affordable housing options and to figure out where we can densify in the right ways. And to suddenly have a proposal that says, oh, we're going to solve all your problems by putting 500,000 people in the middle of the lake. It's just sort of an absurd proposal in my mind for all the kind of responsible government we're trying to do. So hopefully the state legislators will take a closer look and that they'll listen to the scientists, because there are no scientists who are advocating for this. This is a scientifically irresponsible project, and it's financially very, very risky. So hopefully we can get together and use common sense and preserve this wonderful resource.
As we get a little further down the road, we'll have to talk again, because obviously the west side of the lake, south side of the lake development, talks of causeways and bridges. There's so much to explore. And Councilman, thank you so much for spending a little time with us this morning, and a very happy holiday season to you and your family.
To you as well. Thank you so much.
When we come back, we're going to be talking with one of our representatives in the Utah State House of Representatives and what redistricting means to her and others. Redistricting any state is not an easy task. It's very difficult. There's always some grousing, but this time around, especially with the independent commission that was fundamentally set up by the people of the great state of Utah to advise the legislature in their constitutional duty to redistrict. There's a lot of disappointment right now. A lot of focus, of course, on the federal offices, our 4 seats in the U.S. House of Representatives. But as people are looking closer and closer at the various maps now adopted by the legislature and signed by the governor, there are real concerns about who's in and who's out, who's even been districted or redistricted out. And we have one of those individuals joining us today. We have Representative Suzanne Harrison, who is joining us, also a physician in our state. And Representative, welcome to Sunday Edition.
Thank you so much for having me on this show, Doug.
I think of all the conversations we've had now over the years. We've talked to you as a physician, we've talked with you as a legislator. When it finally became a reality that you fundamentally were districted out of your district, what went through your mind?
You know, I found out the way the public found out, when the maps came out at 10 p.m. on a Friday night, a couple days before it was voted on. And my feeling then is the same as it is now. It has been the greatest honor of my life to represent my community and my neighbors in the Utah House of Representatives. And while the political boundaries have changed, my commitment to my community has not. And I plan to run for office in 2022. And I hope that the people of my community will give me the opportunity to serve and continue to represent their voice in government.
I know you are saving the actual announcement for just a little bit later, what political path you are going to take. But we've seen a lot of reports, a lot of impartial observers have said fundamentally what we got at the federal level is a 4-0 for Republicans in our congressional seats. What's the score, in your opinion, in our Utah State Legislature, especially the body you currently serve in, which of course is the House of Representatives? How did Democrats fare versus Republicans who maybe are now out of their old district?
That's a great question, Doug. And, we're going to see what voters think in 2022. But I'll tell you, one thing we do know is that the head of the Utah Republican Party is thrilled with the resulting maps and has said that they anticipate that our already supermajority Republican Utah legislature will become even more of a supermajority. And as you said, there has been a lot of commentary and concern about, especially the congressional maps. I've heard from constituents concerned about the process and also about their feeling that Salt Lake County was unnecessarily divided up and that in many ways dilutes their voice even further and divides a community that while it did need to be divided at least once, it was not necessary for it to be divided into 4 congressional districts. And people just really feel disenfranchised in that the input of the Independent Redistricting Committee was not taken seriously, was not debated by the legislature, and that, the chances of a moderate or a competitive race happening at the congressional level and even in many of the legislative levels is going to be much diminished as a result of these maps.
I agree with you. Most people believe that certainly Salt Lake County, which has well over 1 million people of Utah's 3.4 million people right now, certainly big blocks like that in some way, shape, or form need to be divided, but divided into fourths. I think that caught a lot of people, including many stalwart Republicans, a little off guard. What are the possibilities at this point? I've heard rumblings. We've talked to the people of Better Boundaries, of course. We've had those who were on the commission, those who have worked very, very hard for what got us to what many people hoped would be a fairer process in redistricting the state. I'm hearing rumblings of lawsuits. Are you hearing that as well?
I have heard that as well. And another concern of mine is, in the meantime, when we have boundaries that make it difficult for a competitive race to happen, if the outcome is essentially decided up front because of the numbers of voters of different political ideologies, My concern is that it's going to create more extremism and more division in our political rhetoric. The race won't so much be, the general election. The race will be in those primaries where, if the numbers are such that it's really difficult for there to be that debate and discussion and a competitive race, it tends to attract more extreme political ideology candidates, and will also, I fear, embolden special interests and their influence in our political space. And Utahns aren't interested in extreme politics. They are a wise group of folks, and when we are going to, be fostering a chance for more extreme candidates, I feel like that will hurt our public discourse and transparency in government.
Mm-hmm. I've just got a second or two left on the show, but what are you hearing from your constituents who had you as a representative, but things will change in the 2022 election? What are they saying to you personally?
I've heard from many constituents, and they've been really kind. They encourage me to continue to work for them, and I plan to do that. Like I said, the political boundaries have changed, but my commitment to my community and my neighbors has not, and I will continue to work to represent, good, transparent government, fiscal responsibility, clean air, common sense solutions that appeal to a broad array of people, not just political extremes.
Representative Harrison, we look forward to hearing what your political path will be and what you will choose to run for, and we'll look forward to that on a future program. We'll invite you back.
Thank you so much, Doug, and Merry Christmas, everyone.
Thank you so much. Merry Christmas to you and a very happy holiday. We'll take a break and we'll be right back with more of Sunday Edition. This morning on Sunday Edition, we're very pleased to have Senate candidate Ali Isom joining us. And Ali, you were with the KSL and Deseret News editorial board earlier in the week. Perhaps you could lay out some of the plans and some of the motivation. I was interested when you talked about what finally tilted you toward running for the U.S. Senate seat, because maybe a year or so ago at this time that was not on your radar at all. Let's start there.
Well, first of all, Doug, thank you for making time to have me on today. I appreciate it. What compelled me to jump into this race was a frustration with the deterioration of our national dialogue. It feels like we've become so polarized, so rancorous, so hostile, that we're no longer able to have conversations and get to solutions. And it felt to me like it's time to reclaim the core conservative principles at the heart of the Republican Party. It feels like we've become distracted with culture wars and personalities, and we've stopped talking about real policy solutions and outcomes. And I just feel like it's time to return that conversation to the fundamentals.
You talked about the fact that the divisive nature of the country right now is the greatest threat to our nation. I think many people, Republicans and Democrats, would agree with you on that.
Yes, it absolutely is. I have been having briefings and conversations and exploring solutions with various experts in different arenas. One in the public policy arena for domestic policy, one in an international arena for foreign policy, one in a more diplomatic arena to say, how are we engaging with our allies? And when I ask them all, what is the greatest single threat to the future stability of the United States? They don't tell me China or Russia. They tell me we ourselves are our own greatest threat, because we can't even agree on policy solutions. And until we're able to sit down at the table and be united in the direction we're going as a country, it doesn't matter that China is the single greatest threat to our foreign powers or to our on our domestic soil, because we can't get our act together. We can't agree. We can't even have a conversation. And it's created these wild swings. So I think about the inauguration of President Biden, and you might remember that day. And I mean, who can forget the great, the inaugural poetess and her, Amanda Gorman, and her tremendous effort there. And we all felt like, okay, maybe there's unity here. Maybe it's a new day. And then the very next day, we as Republicans felt like President Biden put his arm around us and then slugged us in the ribs with 35 executive orders. And his executive orders were a response to the last guy's executive orders that were a response to the last guy's executive orders. And they've resorted to executive orders because we can't have a conversation.
Yeah. In the time we have left, Ali, you have made a compact with the state of Utah, your priorities if elected to the Senate. And I'd like to make sure you have time. We just have a couple of minutes left to run through the things that are so important to you. And it's interesting, and you can address this any way you like. It's the last one, but it's the one that really got my attention. And it's order in the Republic. I'll let you handle this list any way you want.
Okay, well, let me preface all of this with on Tuesday or Wednesday, we released a vision for America. I call it the right things, a compact for with Utah and a vision for America. And you can find more detail at allyforutah.com, ALLYFORUTAH.com. And in it, there are 8 principles or 8 priorities that I have. The first one being clarity, communication directly from our elected official to the electorate. And the last one, as you referred to, is order in the Republic. I think our institutions have been challenged. They're dysfunctional, and we really need to take a better look at how we address some of the nation's problems in terms of the Senate's filibuster and the term limits. You know, I would support a constitutional term limit amendment. We've got to have that conversation as states. We as Utah cannot surrender the opportunity to be a voice at the table and an equal voice at the table. So I don't think we should hinder ourselves. But I do think it's worth having that national conversation, as well as national election integrity and voter access, and expediting legal immigration and streamlining that process. So there are various policy elements that are embedded in this, in what I would call my commitment to the state of Utah, to do the right things, to focus on things that matter most and get things done for the state.
Ali, I certainly appreciate you joining us, and we will look forward to many more great conversations as this race unfolds. And unfortunately, we are out of time. That does it for us this morning on Sunday Edition. This will be the final Sunday Edition for this year. We'll be back at the beginning of 2022. But from all of us